Hello everybody, in today's video I'm talking about the lawsuit you may have heard about against the National Association of Realtors and several other real estate brokerages that went down in October of 2023. It's currently being appealed, but in the video today I'm not talking about the lawsuit itself. What I'm talking about is how that is going to impact you if you're planning to buy or sell a home in the United States anytime after January 2024. My name is Dawn Dickinson and I am a realtor in Northern Arizona, so I'm going to give you the lowdown of how it's going to affect my business and probably many other real estate agents across the country. Channel is Living in Northern Arizona, and I post videos every single week about living in the northern half of the state of Arizona. I am a realtor, like I said. I do sell real estate in Northern Arizona, which would include Sedona, Verde Valley, Flagstaff, and the Prescott area. If you ever have a question about buying or selling a home, please reach out to me. My contact information is always in the description below, and I will get back to you. Okay, so just a high-level overview of this lawsuit. The verdict came down sometime in October 2023. I was actually quite surprised because the premise of the lawsuit was that the National Association of Realtors and other real estate brokerages conspired for price colluding, price fixing, and they actually won the first round, which was pretty surprising to me because there are so many ways to buy your home with or without a real estate agent, and commissions were always negotiable, always have been, and always will be. So I was surprised that they won this verdict, and there were a few things that came up during the lawsuit that I'm going to describe to you today. One is how us real estate agents get paid, and the other is the options that you have when you're selling a home and how that might affect you going on from this day forward when you're wanting to buy or sell a home. So I want to start out by saying if you hire a professional real estate agent, a realtor, to get your home sold, that is, in my opinion, of course, the way you're going to get the most amount of money for your home sale, and that will be even net after the real estate commissions. And that's because realtors are professionals who, this is all we do, we buy and sell home. And so a listing agent, their goal is to get you the highest price for your home, and a buyer's agent, we also sometimes call it buyer broker, selling agent, will do the best job to get the best price for their client. So traditionally, real estate agents will get, and the amount of money or percentage of commission will depend on the market, right? So when the market is going gangbusters, real estate agents will get a lower amount of commissions, and that is because sellers think that, oh, it's easy to sell my house. Everybody's wanting to buy a house, so I'm not going to pay you as much. And in the other direction, when it's a strong buyer's market, a real estate agent will get more because it's more difficult to sell their house. So typically, probably 75% of the sales of real estate will get between 5 or 6% of the selling price, and then the listing agent will split that 5 or 6%, so it's going to be like 3%, 2.5% with the buyer broker who brings a buyer to the table and closes a deal. It's typically split 50%, but when the market was hot in 2020, 2021, 2022, I noticed a lot of listing agents keeping a higher percentage of the commission for themselves. So say a 6% listing, they would keep 3.5% and give the buyer broker 2.5%. And when the market is shifted, sometimes it's the other way around. But typically a real estate agent will get 2.5 to 3% on one side of the deal. When we talk about side of the deal, we mean, the buyer side versus the seller side. So typically, now sometimes we would negotiate lower than that. At one point I took a listing for 4%. I will never do that again, because typically when you're paying a low co-broke, is what we call it. The co-broke is what you would give the buyer's agent to do the deal. Buyer's agent sees 2% and they're like, I don't really gonna recommend this house because it's barely paying. So typically the incentive is to get a buyer broker to bring a buyer and sell your deal. Now, the reason this is actually pretty a good model is because you do have a lot of agents that do mostly sellers, and you have a lot of agents that do mostly buyers. I, for instance, probably do about 75% of the time I'm representing a buyer, but there are other agents, and in a small town like Sedona, you get to know all the other agents, you get to have relationships with them, and it's also advantageous because a seller's agent maybe does not have a pool of buyers that they can reach out to when they have a new listing. But a buyer's agent like me, for instance, I could have a couple of hundred people on a drip campaign where they regularly get emails from me that show them homes that match their criteria. And I sometimes have customers that I have not talked to in a year call me up and say, hey, I saw this listing you sent me. I'm interested in finding out more about it. So because of the specialization of many agents, it actually works out well, and it's advantageous for the seller to pay the commission that the seller's agent or the listing agent is going to split with the buyer's agent, just because of the relationship of specialties and who has a pool of buyers, who is more familiar working with sellers, and that kind of thing. So that has worked out well over the years. And the other reason that that's a good model, in my opinion, of course, right, I'm a realtor, is that many times buyers are, especially young buyers, they are scraping up all they have to put a down payment. So say they're scraping up 3 to 5% down payment, and then they're paying closing costs at a loan. They don't have an extra 2-3% to pay their buyer's agent. So with this model, we know that the buyer's agent is the buyer himself or herself is going to be represented, and they're going to get paid by the seller, because when sellers agents are no longer allowing the commission to be split with a buyer's agent, a buyer may not now be able to afford their agent, and they may not be able to afford to buy your house, and so it may not sell. The other thing is maybe buyer's agents would be scared off. Maybe they would go directly to a seller's agent, and then they would be unrepresentative, and that makes a lot of room for a buyer to get screwed over in a deal, because they don't know their and a listing agent is always going to be loyal to the seller, because the seller is who is paying them. So it is advantageous for the buyer, it's advantageous for the seller. And the other thing that is, say you're paying your listing agent 6% to sell your house, why would you care if they're splitting it with the buyer's agent who is making a successful transaction, or say they're splitting the money with a company that runs a bunch of print ads? Say, like, does it really matter how that money is spent? You've always been paying 5 or 6% to hire a professional realtor to get the best price of your home. So the next point I'd like to make is, as a seller, you have always had a choice on how you want to sell your home. So first of all, if you want to sell your home with a professional real estate agent, which of course is what I recommend, right? I'm a realtor, I am biased, but if you decide to do that, you can interview several agents. One agent may charge 6% for the sale of your home. That would probably be a more seasoned agent. Some of the inexperienced agents might be more desperate to take a deal. They may take 4%, they may take 5%, but it's always been negotiable. And if you don't want to pay 6%, find an agent who will take 5%. And if you really don't think that it's necessary to pay 5%, find an agent who will take 4%. Again, if you have an agent taking 4%, they may not be as likely to spend money on advertising or to do a lot of effort to sell your home. You know, sometimes it's you get what you pay for. But if you don't want to hire an agent at all, you can do for sale by owner. And for sale by owner today is actually a lot easier than it used to be, because you could put your home on Zillow and get a little more visibility. But there are still risks to doing for sale by owner, because you're not an experienced agent, and you could set yourself for legal liability down the road. But there are so many more choices even today. You've got these iBuyers, you have OfferPad, you have Open Door. These are iBuyers. Now they come in and say they're not going to charge you commission at all, but do read the fine print if you're ever dealing with one of those companies, because they will have a transaction fee or another fee that probably is similar to commission, but they're just disguising it when they say no no commission, but no, there's a fee. So look at those. And then there's other things going on, like you have so many investors today offering to buy your house with no commissions, and they actually probably will give you no commission sale because they want to get a good value on the sale. They're going to flip it and fix it up and sell it for profit. So in Phoenix, for instance, you can't even turn on the local news without seeing an ad for DougHopkins.com or Andrew the Home Buyer or several other investors that will buy your home for no commission. So the fact that the lawsuit actually, one, makes me think the NAR hired the cheapest attorney that they could find. And the other ironic thing about that is lawyers stand to gain maybe $800 million for winning the lawsuit, and lawyers who probably get often 25 to 50% of the settlement that they get for their clients are now complaining that real estate agents get 5 or 6% of the deal. So a little bit strange, but that's what is going on. But now I'm going to talk about how the result of this lawsuit is going to impact you starting in January 2024 and moving forward. Okay, so the first thing that's going to happen to you as a seller is you may bring this up to a realtor who is giving you a listing presentation at your listing appointment, and when it's time to negotiate the fee, you could say, well, I just saw that I don't have to pay a buyer broker anymore. And then you could negotiate with that seller if you want to make that option available. Now, it's always been available, except some MLS services allowed you to not put zero as compensation, but you could put $1, and now they're changing it to zero. So you could say $1 or zero compensation to a buyer broker. I don't want you paying a buyer broker, and that would be okay. Now, most seasoned real estate agents at this point that I know of are saying that they're not going to take a listing that will do that because they know if they really want to sell the home, they're going to have to pay a buyer broker and split that commission with the buyer broker. But who knows what's going to go on down the line. It's just something that you will try to negotiate, or you may try to negotiate, but realize if you do this, you're lessening the chance of selling your home or getting top dollar for the home. Now, if you are a buyer, this is probably going to be the biggest change. Now, typically in my business, we have a form that's called a buyer broker agreement, and if you sign that agreement, it tells it's a legally binding agreement that you have to now work with this agent, and you can't just agent shop at that point. So typically with me, when I have somebody calling in, I actually don't use that form very often at all because it's going to be paid for by the seller, and more often than not, it's designed to protect the agent for having a buyer come, waste all my time, and then go to an open house and buy something without me. So that's happened before, similar situations, and I don't like that, but I don't like to have people forced to work with me if they don't really want to work with me. So I have not been forceful to make clients sign the buyer broker agreement, but starting in January 2020, I'm going to have my clients start signing that agreement. And there are some brokerages that are requiring their agents to have their clients sign a buyer broker agreement in order to work with them. So you as a buyer are likely now to be forced to sign a buyer broker agreement, and some agents might not talk to you after one conversation. What I'm planning to do, and I know some of my colleagues are planning to do, is if you call me on the phone, certainly I'll have conversations with you. I will send you listings, and I probably will even take you out one time to look at homes, because here in my market, what happens are people are coming from out of town. They may not know if they want to move here or not, and they may need a day to just check out the area, look at some homes and see, do I really want to move to Sedona, or do I really want to move to Arizona? And I want to give them like one experience, one day out before they decide, yes, I want to move here and commit to sign the buyer broker agreement. But other agents now are going to make you sign that agreement much earlier. So let me go into detail about what this buyer broker agreement is going to say. First, it'll say that you're working with me or whatever agent that you pick. And in the compensation form, I will say something like, I get paid 2.5% to 3% of the sales price typically paid by the seller. But now that's going to change. So first of all, if there's a franchise fee, that will be listed on the buyer broker agreement, and at my current place, it's $295 franchise fee that the buyer will pay for, and I will pay the rest of the franchise fee. And then I'm going to say 2.5% to 3% of the sales price, and that will be typically paid by the seller. But in instances where it is not paid by the seller, the buyer will be the one that will have to pay me the 2.5%. So I'm going to put that out in the buyer broker agreement from now on. Now there are conditions that you could work out with your buyer's broker if you come across a listing that is not paying the 2.5 or whatever the minimum is that that agent will accept. So there are a couple things, like for instance, this has always been the case with the for sale by owner, is your agent reaches out to the seller, or for the for sale by owner, or to the seller's agent and says, look, I have a buyer for you, but I'm only going to present a deal to you if you agree to pay my 2.5%. And so then you would have some negotiation between the agents on how the buyer's agent is going to get paid. And of course, if the seller's agent is already paying it, there's a moot point. You don't have to worry about it. The other thing is you could say, I'm only going to send you listings that are paying me the 2.5% or more, so that you don't have to look at something and get confused and not know what to do. And then the third option is, if neither of those other two things will work, that you will pay my commission, the 2.5% yourself. Now, down the road, it's possible that we can roll the buyer broker commission into closing costs and have that count as a seller concession. But right now, that is something that has to be worked out with your mortgage lender, if that would be possible down the road. Right now, I don't know if it's going to go that way, but these are going to be your options going into buying a house in 2024. So I hope that helps. I hope that kind of explains how it's going to all go down, what's going to take from you. Again, as a seller, you're probably going to be in the better position to sell your home if you just continue to allow your listing agent to split that commission with the buyer's agent. But again, if you don't want to do that, you need to specify that in your listing appointment, because it's all written out in the listing agreement, or at least in the area that I serve, it's listed out in the listing agreement. It says, I am going to pay Dawn Dickinson 6% to sell my house, and in the event a buyer broker brings a client and completes the sale, I will be splitting that and giving 3% to the buyer broker. And in cases where they're keeping more, it would say 2.5%. But there is a place on the listing form, at least in Arizona, that shows how much your listing agent is going to pay to the buyer broker. So that's just something that you need to be aware of right now, especially if it's a concern to you. But it's always been important, because if you have some listing agent that's charging you 6% and they're going to say, I'm only going to pay the buyer broker 1%, that's going to really impair the ability for you to sell your home and get top dollar. So that's all for today. I hope you found this useful. My name is Dawn Dickinson, the channel living in Northern Arizona. If you liked the video, please do me a favor and hit the like button and subscribe. I post videos every single week. And again, I am a realtor in Northern Arizona. So if you ever have a question about buying or selling a home in the state of Arizona, give me a call, text, email. I will get back to you. My contact information is always in the description below. I hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you back here again next week.